Here's how I make sculptures, great fun and easy for beginners. Today we're going to be creating with air dry clay, a clay that does not need to be fired in the kiln or baked in the oven. It dries naturally in the air. I am going to share with you the basic techniques of sculpting any animal or any creature of your choice. If you are new to working with clay, then I recommend starting with a simple design idea that doesn't have thin or fragile details. For some inspiration of what to make, take a look in some books or on Pinterest. When making a design, for example, of this size, we don't want this to be a solid block of air dry clay, as it would take weeks for the inside of this to dry. So we either want the air dry clay to be hollow inside, or an option that is much easier is to create an armature, which is an internal structure. Here's an example, and you can think of it as the animal or creature's skeleton. I start off with things like a ball, a pebble, styrofoam, some wire, and most importantly some tin foil. Always scrunch the tin foil up and pull it back out to give it some texture. A pebble can give the air dry clay plenty of weight, so if you need some weight in your sculpture, then I recommend starting off with a pebble low down in the base. When building the internal structure like this, always remember it's going to get that little bit larger as we add the clay on top. I'm basing my design on this little octopus. Because the 8 little arms are so small and they're quite chunky, I'm going to add these on as the clay. So a basic round creature can be created this way with a ball or a pebble. I use wire inside of an armature when there's more detail. You can use thick wire, but if you have thinner wire you can double it over and twist it together to make it stronger like this. I'm going to be making a squirrel with a bushy tail, and you need wire inside like this to give it a good structure. This is going to be a fairly small squirrel, and so the wire and the tin foil are all I need for this armature. Look for the non-shiny side, and I always put this on the outside. As you can see, I scrunch the tin foil and wrap it up with that wire inside. The squirrel needs a head, so I've taken some tin foil, rolled this into a ball, and then I can attach this here. You can attach it with some hot glue at this stage if you need to, or you can wrap it around with the tin foil like I do. So think of the tin foil as your sculpting medium for now, and really work your fingers and press all that tin foil into place. Try and visualize the animal or creature that you are making. Depending on the design, use large pieces of tin foil, or here I find it easier to use smaller pieces and wrap them around like this. Something like the handle of a spoon can really help you get some good shape. If you'd like to add some hot glue, it's not necessary, but it does help to fill any of those small gaps. And there we have it, my squirrel armature ready for some air dry clay. I have one more quick design to show you, then we'll get on to adding in the clay. Wire legs like this are also another option, just make sure the wire is not sharp on the ends. Hot glue is really handy for adding wire into the tin foil so that the wire doesn't slip and slide about. Here I'm making a quick and simple bug, and I really do love this one. You have the chance of adding air dry clay to the legs, but in this one I actually leave the wire bare. Adding the tin foil around the body, and I feel he needs a bit of a larger head, so I'm adding another section with some hot glue, just simply like this. I've bent the legs into place and he's ready for some clay. So out of these basic items that you can hopefully find around your home, we're able to make our internal structure, our armature for the air dry clay. What will you make? Please do let me know. Covering the armatures with air dry clay. My aim is to get the similar thickness of clay all around the internal structure. So to do this, you can pinch the clay flat between your fingers or take a rolling pin and roll it out. I've rolled mine fairly thin, as you can see here. You can add the clay in smaller sections, and I'll show you that a little bit later, or as I do here, I'm just trying to cover that whole piece fully in clay. And I do this by pressing it round and make sure I have excess in just the one area here and pinching it shut, and then I'm going to cut this off with a table knife. Have a go and see how best this works for you. Just make sure you take away the excess clay so that it dries lots quicker, so that there's not big clumps of clay, and also we then have that clay to use for our details. This is great fun, so really do enjoy the process. As you're working with it, the clay should still be lovely and soft, and so we can use our thumb and our fingers to smooth out any of the joins. Any excess clay that we've removed, always make sure you roll this up in a ball and put it in a little container or a plastic bag to keep it from drying out until we need it again. If you do find the clay is starting to dry out, you can use a damp sponge and smooth it that way, or I find it quite easy to take a knife and really smooth over all the cracks, and that brings everything all back together again. Air dry clay slip is what I have here, and it's great for smoothing out any cracks and making everything lovely and smooth. The excess clay I've kneaded back together now and cut this into 8 equal chunks, rolling them into rounds and then forming them into the little arm or tentacle shapes, keeping them nice and chunky so that they're not delicate and not going to break. Attaching 2 pieces of air dry clay together is very important, and to do this we use the score and slip method. Take anything that will score the clay. Here I have a simple toothpick and I'm scoring both surfaces that are going to be joined together. After adding a thin layer of slip, I place both surfaces together and add some pressure. This will start to form a strong join. Then take a knife or your finger and smooth both pieces together. What we are trying to do here is make those 2 pieces of air dry clay back into one piece again. The slip or a little bit of water can be added just to smooth out any of those creases. So this technique can be used for adding any limbs, any ears, or any other features that are not too delicate. If you don't use this technique and you just squish 2 pieces of air dry clay together, then sadly when it dries it most likely will just fall apart. It's a good idea to work on a board or a piece of wax paper that you can turn and move your piece around so that you can work on it from all angles. Find items around your home that you can add details with, as these make wonderful tools. To make the octopus even cuter, add some more little details. I'm turning up each of the little arms and I'll do this on all of them. You can use something like a damp sponge for final smoothing. Then it's important to let it dry fully in a nice cool space. If you dry air dry clay too quickly and in a warm environment, it can crack. I'll now show you the squirrel with the air dry clay. I roll the clay fairly thin and then taking small sections at a time by ripping the clay apart, adding this over the tin foil, and I find this really quite an easy method and hopefully you enjoy it too. The air dry clay fresh out of the packet should be lovely and soft, and I find it easy to work with. This is the Das brand air dry clay and it is my preferred one as I do find it lovely and soft. For now we just need to concentrate on covering that whole tin foil, and we can add any details or any extra bits after we have done this. Our hands are really our best tool when it comes to working with air dry clay. So smooth the clay all around, and don't worry if you have any little bare bits, like there's a little bit of tin foil poking through there. I just take a little extra of the clay and I blend this on top. Then for the tail, I really feel he needs a bushier bit of tail, and so I'm adding some more clay on the top. You can do the score and slip method if you wish at this time, but I'm going to really blend that clay on here. Like you see here, I take the knife and really blend and sculpt that so that it's actually becoming one already. Again, using something like the back of a knife or a spoon to give you more detail. I'm going to add some ears. Now these ears aren't too delicate, that's really important with the air dry clay. I've made the ears twice the size of the size they're going to end up, and that's really important because I'm going to blend in half of that clay so that we really make it all into that one piece again. Making a creature or an animal with fur or some texture really works well. So here I'm taking my toothpick and adding in the little fur detail, and that means we don't have to smooth that clay out. I really love that. So really add as much detail as you wish, but do enjoy the process. This design really needed that wire inside, otherwise if I'd have created this just from air dry clay, the tail would just fall down and it would more likely crack once dried. I set this aside to let it dry. I'll quickly just show you the insect. We basically add the clay in exactly the same way as we did for the squirrel, but I'm wrapping it around to the base of the wire and then making sure the join is lovely all around the base of the wires. If I was to make wire legs that I was going to cover in air dry clay, I'd use the twist technique as I showed you early on, and that helps the air dry clay grip onto those twists much easier. Or better still, if you want to cover the wire in clay, I did another video where I covered the arms and legs with polymer clay, so do take a look if you're interested. Once more, smoothing out the clay. Adding details to the little creatures like this is really the fun bit. I use a cocktail stick and anything else I can find to make marks. I make the little dimples with the other end of a paintbrush. So have a good think about the animals or creatures you'd like to make with air dry clay. Then we let them dry fully. Don't worry if they're not quite as smooth as you'd like them to be. We can sand them down with some fine sandpaper once they are fully dry. Here they are about 4 days later, completely dry. They are a lovely crisp white and there are no damp patches. I have some really fine sandpaper here. If you have a smooth area like there is on the octopus, you can use the sandpaper to smooth out any cracks and creases. Use a mask or do this outside, just make sure you don't breathe in any of those particles. And brush away all the dust before painting. Adding texture like we did with the squirrel eliminates the sanding process, which is fantastic. I'm using acrylic paint to paint the creatures. We want to make sure that we keep the texture that we've added, like here on the squirrel, so what I like to do is add a little bit of water to the acrylic paint, and that way the paint really absorbs and goes into all those little details so that we don't have any white patches. I will then let this dry and then build up the layers and add some different colours in as I go. 2 thin coats of paint are always far better than 1 thick coat of paint. The acrylic paint is then much likely to adhere really well to the air dry clay, resulting in a beautiful finish, but these definitely do need varnishing to protect them further. Take your time and enjoy the painting process. Which part of the process do you like best? Please do let me know in the comments below. I've added quite a bit of water to my dark acrylic paint. I'm adding it in as some extra detail and some extra shadow. So really do enjoy the process. I like adding lots of little details with my fine paintbrush at the end, just like this. This is definitely one to have fun with and definitely one that the children enjoy as well. I show you just at the end of this video the fun we had with creating these with a group of kids. A nice soft paintbrush works best and really work to smooth out all those paint strokes. Demonstrating to a group of children how to make these animals and creatures is lots of fun, and I really loved how much they got stuck in and how much creativity was there. They all made the tinfoil armatures and really enjoyed playing with the clay. They all took on board all the techniques that I showed them, and it was really wonderful to see them really enjoying themselves. So if you've got kids or a group of kids that can try and enjoy this, then I recommend seeing what creativity happens when you explore making these animals and creatures. The score and slip method and then blending really made sure all those little limbs and little feet all stayed in place, so that was really satisfying to see right at the end. It's lovely working with children as they really have great imaginations, and I love to see all the different things that they created. Painting them as well was also lots of fun. And hopefully you can see adding that armature inside really makes them strong and sturdy, otherwise the tails and the limbs would have fallen off. These are awaiting another coat of paint and then will need to be varnished. I finished painting mine, and hopefully you can see it's a really great process from the beginning to the end. Once they are fully painted, do make sure that you varnish them. They do need to be sealed. There are many different craft varnishes, and I have made this video if you're interested to see the kind of ones I like to use. So thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next creative video.